Once upon a time, I lived in a city. It was crowded and hot. And I had aspirations of owning an apple orchard one day.
We have farmlands that are expressing to us that they have these new conditions. And we're seeing areas of farmland that are becoming really saturated for longer into the spring.
Turns out I couldn't afford anything else other than a wetland that is maybe 10 feet above sea level. Here I was on this money-losing venture and scratched my head for about a year not knowing how to plant apples on it.
It's harder to get livestock out on these spaces. It's harder to plant crops.
So we're a multi-generational farm. We've been on Whidbey Island since 1946.
They may have some old drainage infrastructure that's not working as well as it used to. There's certainly changes in our weather patterns and our seasons.
We're in the midst of climate disruption now. It used to be something we talked about off in the future. Farmers are on the front line of that now.
So what we thought we would do with this funding is look at applying agroforestry systems to these spaces.
This is a time for information gathering because we're entering a period of climate pattern shifts that requires a lot of new data. And the new data is going to be provided by experimenting and trying new things.
Seasonally, these ponds will overflow. It pushes all the oxygen out of the soil, it makes it compacted.
Instead of going and draining the spaces and trying to do that route, we thought we could transition some of these areas into perennial crops that were higher value, that could tolerate the conditions on the landscape.
I'm about to graft a Pacific crabapple, which is a native crabapple, serving as the root base for a cider apple. These will be essentially a wet orchard.
This opportunity with the Conservation District came along, and I think it's hopefully going to work well in just a ton of ways for our farm and the direction we're headed with regenerative agriculture.
All right, hold on to your hats. The blueberries are looking kind of sleepy right now. They're starting to wake up. The buds are still pretty tight. Really, the biggest three motivating factors of this property are the slough and the blueberries and the customers. The slough is a push-pull between needing access to deal with the plants and wanting to leave the farm as natural and native as we can.
These blueberries are a lot older than we are, and they've been doing what they've been doing for quite a number of years. It would be better to allow the plants to just live the way they want to, essentially.
How can we create a system here where we make this transition towards agroforestry that also minimizes maintenance, allows for expansion in the future, that sort of thing? So alley cropping is what we came up with. We settled on having aronia be the focal crop here. Our alley crop is hay. We're only planting down the center line of each bed, and the reason for that is because some of the plants that we included are not great for some kinds of livestock, and we didn't want the plants we planted to end up getting sucked into the hay and then put toxic plants into the hay. So that's something we have to think about with this kind of system. I honestly think that running away from complexity is where we get ourselves in trouble. Trying to manage complex ecosystems from a simplified perspective, that leads us down a whole bunch of roads we don't want to go down.
Nature doesn't like a vacuum. It wants to work in a system. If you disrupt enough, you'll get things that you don't want. So this is about minimal disruption and mimicking the patterns we see in nature.
When we took over the farm, it was conventional. Herbicides, synthetic fertilizer, and we did cold turkey organic. And that was a mistake because a natural system requires like this ecosystem functioning in balance. And so everything just crashed. We had low productivity, it was bad. What I said was like, I can't farm organically conventionally, meaning like I can't just go buy enough organic fertilizers to make up for that. And the answer is like, you just have to have animals. Our entire planet is co-evolved. Most of the grasses and plant species are co-evolved with large ruminants. And that's how they function. That's how those ecosystems function really well. Just kind of clicked. It made a ton of sense to me. Like, I think it makes sense on an intuitive level.
I'd say one of the best decisions we made starting was to choose to be no-till. At the time, it wasn't an easy choice because everybody's tilling and they look at you crazy if you say you're not going to. It can take up to 800 years to naturally produce an inch of quality topsoil, and that can go away in a matter of minutes if you're tilling.
That's exactly what you want your soil to look like. Jake's doing things right.
There's fungal hyphae throughout the soil. That can move nutrients across the floor. It can send biochemical signals to other trees. So rather than disrupt that or try to recreate it, we tuck into it and leverage it. It means some things will work and some things won't. That's part of being a climate adaptive farmer, is experimenting.
Turning agroforestry into paid mortgage is like a transition that needs to happen if we're really going to be doing agroforestry, right?
So we're up here at Sauk Farm today producing our blueberry juice. Our core customer, our die-hard customers are all our Juice Club members. There's a possibility that we can experiment with aronia berries as a juice base. So we're really excited about the possibility of taking the riparian planting and being able to actually turn that into a farmable barrier. Now we got to do the organoleptic testing. That's a fancy word for drinking it.
I have never seen this much in here. And in a month, this will be a riot of color. We've got a little packing shop. We put the stuff in envelopes and send it off to other folks who are creating little meadows like this in their homes or their communities. The seed business is what has saved us and what has allowed the apple orchard to begin to take some flight here. This has in many ways become kind of a living laboratory.
Family scale agriculture is pretty powerful. If you have 20 feet, 200 feet, if you've got a little square that you want to do something weird to, just explore what options are out there.
That diversity is like really important, I think, for the future of farming and growing food responsibly.
We have a model that's all around us, right? We have the model that's out in the forest, that's in the pastures, that's in the meadows. I have no interest in farming unless it's in a model like this.
If we can show that Pacific crabapple is a viable option in these locations, we could potentially be opening up a lot of space for farmers to utilize while also improving the soil and the water quality.
Part of the approach here is to learn from past practices, apply them to today's challenges with an eye towards a rapidly shifting future.
Embrace complexity. Holistic means we need to be thinking about how many pieces of the puzzle we can keep on the table and not overwhelm ourselves, rather than how many pieces can we throw away and externalize and pass costs on to other generations or other people. The idea of managing complex systems is part and parcel with what we need to do if we want to continue to be walking around on planet Earth.